How about a Coppola quick facts?
Coppola quick facts here. There actually are a bunch, so I'll jump right in. The movie, written by the husband and wife team of Jerry Littling. I'm never going to get that name right. Lightling. I think that's right. Lightling, something like that. And Arlene Sarner began the film as a 50-page treatment that was sent to producer Paul Gurian in July of 1983, and he was intrigued by the premise, so he assisted the writers in developing the screenplay. This, of course, is loosely based on the Buddy Holly song of the same name, which there really isn't much to that Buddy Holly song. So I don't know how you really write a whole movie off of that 2-minute long song. That is, of course, a sequel song to the original Peggy Sue, which was his biggest hit. Fun fact, Peggy Sue was originally supposed to be called Cindy Lou, and was written for Buddy Holly's niece. But it was changed to Peggy Sue after co-writer Jerry Allison, who was the drummer for the Crickets, the band that backed up Buddy Holly, after his girlfriend broke up with him, and he changed the lyrics to get her back, which actually worked, and they ended up getting married. Not for long, but they got married for a while. So Peggy Sue did get married. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Buddy Holly died in a fiery plane crash, and his niece doesn't get credit for that song. It's funny that there is a real Peggy Sue that's actually lived their whole life with that song playing everywhere you go for eternity. It's kind of crazy.
And a movie.
The role of Peggy Sue was originally offered to Deborah Winger, who was cast, but she got into a bicycle accident that caused her back injury and forced her to pull out of the film. And we got Kathleen Turner, who got an Oscar nomination somehow from this film. Yeah. I don't get that one either.
I think it's because she was the only thing kind of holding this movie somewhat together.
I feel like it was Francis Ford Coppola directed this. Well, give one of the principal stars an Oscar nomination. And then they were like, oh, Nick Cage is doing some really weird shit. Kathleen Turner? When Deborah Winger was attached to star, she had asked Penny Marshall of Laverne and Shirley fame, who ended up becoming a huge director about this time, if she would direct the film. Marshall met with Tom Hanks and Sean Penn for the role of Crazy Charlie. But she was fired 3 weeks into pre-production by the producers, who felt that the film had gotten too big for a first-time director. That was her first thing, and then I think her next film was that Jumping Jack Flash film with Whoopi Goldberg, which ended up being kind of a hit. Production began August 19th, 1985, and was completed in late October, although scheduled for a May 1986 release. Coppola put the film back in production in the spring of 1986, so right before it was supposed to come out, to shoot a new ending after realizing there weren't enough tears, like I said earlier.
Okay.
I don't know. Weird, creepy shot that we'll talk about of the mirror perspective thing. That was what he came up with to make it more impactful. I don't know. It's a weird ending, and leaves you with kind of a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah. That's what he did. He added that to the ending. I wonder what the original ending of it was then,
I don't know.
Maybe something a little more coherent to the plot of the movie.
Maybe she just came back and died.
Or didn't come back. She just
it
was her going to the afterlife. She finds out she's in heaven the whole time or something, and she's just reliving her. I don't know.
It does get weirder and weirder as this fucking heart attack trip or whatever this is goes on.
I guess makes sense when you finally find out what happened. It's oh, okay, it's a fever dream or coma or whatever. And
kind of the same thing with Cage's character. He's way less weird and off-putting in the actual reality. When he shows up at the reunion, He's crazy in his commercial, but that's just a character that he's playing to sell TVs or whatever. But then in reality, he's not nearly that weird.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, he's supposed to be a 17-year-old. You can't judge everybody by what they were like when they were 17. They're going to be awkward and weird.
Please don't judge me by what I did when I was 17.
Right.
This is Kathleen Turner's only Oscar-nominated performance.
I'm just... Why this one? I don't get it.
Why this one?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've watched not like a huge sample size of Kathleen Turner's performances, but like a lot of her mid to late 80s, early 90s stuff. And I will say there's better performances than this. Like, she doesn't really even play a believable young version of herself. And there's barely any makeup on her specifically, which originally I was like, is this to play up the fact that like she's the one who's making this whole reality, so she is basically just herself still? But then I looked at her makeup in the coma scene and I was like, yeah, they definitely tried to make her look older in that scene.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was 30 when they filmed this. She's supposed to be playing somebody who's a little older than 30. Not much. But then it's like, you're not really a convincing 17-year-old and you're not really a convincing 40-year-old. I guess more convincing as a 40-year-old, but the makeup's weird. Yeah. It's weird choices. It's some weird stuff with this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of like older people. Especially in the flashbacks from the reunion. Like those people were like in their 30s, even like late 30s.
Yeah.
And it shows. Yeah, he's a balding 17-year-old. Okay. This is one that I stumbled upon that I have never heard before. Nicolas Cage was considered for the role of Harry in Dumb and Dumber. Could you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah.
You could?
I mean, that's
he's
Jeff
sort
Daniels,
of the
right?
straight. Yeah, he's sort of the straight guy in the buddy relationship.
Yeah, no, because then you'd have Jim Carrey and Nicolas Cage trying to do weird shit against each other. And
he would have been better as Lloyd.
Yeah,
with Jeff Daniels still.
But then you'd lose Jim Carrey, who's Jim Carrey's
but as
Jim
Harry,
Carrey.
That would have been weird.
Yeah. Like he'd basically just be playing.
Totally redeem yourself.
I'd say that, or he'd just play like kind of the dumb jock version of his Best of Times character, maybe. Like
Best of Times back. I never wanted our pets' heads to fall off. My dad won't talk to me about it when his pets' heads fell off.
He's just screaming, pointing at his bicep.
God.
They're coming to get us.
I don't know if you guys saw, because I don't think anybody saw, but Kathleen Turner was actually in Dumb and Dumber 2, which I have just blacked out of memory that even exists.
Yeah, I didn't watch
holy
prequel.
shit, that movie was terrible.
I watched the prequel that they did. I made it 10 minutes into that, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm done."
Yeah.
So then when they did the actual sequel, I was like, "I'm good. I don't need to shit on the first movie ever again."
The second movie is much better than the prequel, I will say.
Would hope.
But that's not a very high bar. So
yeah.
In the original script, we will see her in the reunion, but then we don't see her in the flashback. But the woman who was in the wheelchair, Rosalie, at Peggy Sue's high school reunion was a gymnast who was crippled in an accident in the flashback that we were supposed to see. Peggy Sue actually tried to take advantage of her knowledge of the future and stop that from happening, which I'm guessing she would have been successful. And then when she flashed back to the present, she would have still been in a wheelchair. So I was like,
hey, that would have added some tears. Maybe he could have left both of those scenes in.
Yeah. What a weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I totally forgot about that character.
Yeah, it's like, why is this character here? And like, it was obviously set up for something, and then you're like, oh well, I guess there's no payoff to that. Because they made a big point to show her in the wheelchair, and like,
yeah,
I don't know. She also used her knowledge to invent pantyhose, as we see on screen, and encouraging people to invest in Xerox, which would have been helpful for about 10 years there.
Yeah.
Helen Hunt, who plays Peggy Sue and Charlie's daughter, is actually 9 years younger than her mom in the film, Kathleen Turner, and a year older than Nicolas Cage.
I thought that was the weirdest casting. I was like,
So
yeah,
she looks older than Kathleen Turner.
Which they make a joke about it.
Yeah.
So I guess you lampshade it, then it's okay.
Yeah,
she and I had the same birthday.
We're twins.
Several decades apart, but maybe she could play my younger sister in a movie or something. I don't know.
Oh, wait, Helen Hunt is shares a birthday with you? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
her birthday's the same as mine.
Yeah.
Not year.
Always makes me
obviously.
think of my birthday, you know.
Yeah, we don't need to do
Any famous people you share your birthday
with somebody. Yeah. Hitler. Steve Guttenberg, the Goot, was considered for the role of Charlie, which would have been awesome. I think that would have worked.
Yeah.
Guttenberg was great. I don't know why Guttenberg like fell off, because I genuinely enjoyed all of Guttenberg's performances. Then he just became the guy who's in Police Academy.
Yeah, I think the style of movie he did fell off, and he couldn't get out of that.
Kind of raunchy slapstick comedies.
Yeah,
I guess. In his biography, The Gutenberg Bible, which is genius, Steve recounts that he spent most of his audition time questioning Francis Ford Coppola about making The Godfather. Can't imagine why he didn't get the movie. Get the role.
Fuck it, I'll just cast my nephew. He's not going to talk about The Godfather with me. It's the worst that can happen.
Doesn't give a shit about The Godfather. Grew up with it. Another big name that turned down the role of Charlie Bodell was Dennis Quaid, who I could also see in this role.
He's just kind of that guy.
Yeah. Thankfully, he's not Randy Quaid, though.
Yeah. Who had like one famous role and then went nuts. Or I guess two.
He's got two, roles. Dude.
Yeah.
Independence Day.
He plays a crazy guy.
He's got some great YouTube videos, though.
He's great really
good. Really good on YouTube these days.
Probably hangs out with John Voight now.
Yep. Yeah, him and Kid Rock and
the My Pillow guy.
John Voight and the My Pillow guy. They're going to save America.
Don't forget Kanye.
Yay, thank you.
Nicolas Cage, finally we'll get into Nick's performance here. Nicolas Cage based his character's voice on Pokey from The Gumby Show. It's like, what the fuck, dude? Why? Francis Ford Coppola and the producers hated the voice. And Cage was nearly fired, but somehow Nick convinced Coppola that he was making a good choice. Like, if you can convince Francis Ford Coppola that you're making a great acting choice by doing a pokey voice, like, this dude should have run for president.
I can't imagine that wouldn't have worked if he hadn't been his nephew.
Yes.
Like any other actor trying that.
Dennis Quaid shows up.
Yeah, Steve Guttenberg.
I'm going to talk like this the whole movie.
Yeah. I wonder if he even told him, I'm trying to sound like Pokey, from the Gumby, that show I watched when I was a kid. Remember? Or if he was just like, why are you doing the voice?
I'd never watched that show. What the hell are you talking about? Cage has later said that he never wanted to play this role, but was asked multiple times by his uncle to do this movie. And he said he agreed to take the part only if he could do it in an over-the-top manner. It's a Coppola movie, dude.
Oh, my God.
Like, even, I mean, so that was, let's go back to what? Valley Girl was what, 1983?
Yeah.
So 3 years into his acting career, he told Francis Ford Coppola, go fuck yourself unless I can do Pokey the whole goddamn movie.
I mean, it's his uncle, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, I guess now that knowing that they were approaching him to try and get him to play makes
That's
a little
his
more
story,
sense.
though.
Yeah, I guess. Because yeah, I still feel like they could have got anybody else to do it. Like, I don't know. Like, it couldn't have been that hard to find somebody who wanted to work with Francis Ford Coppola and wouldn't do a stupid voice.
Like, Cage was very early on in his career and
Yeah.
was mostly playing like side characters and stuff. He wasn't like starring in much at this point. I mean, he had a few starring roles, obviously, but not anything on par with like Raising Arizona or something like that at this point. So
I just love the idea of his uncle watching Pig and being like, why couldn't he have given me that?
I think Nick had a very like weird interpretation of acting up until the early 90s, and he
still does, but
I think he still does, but he reins it in. Yeah,
he reins it in when he understands. When he has, I think when he has a clear picture of what that character is or who that character is, I think he is able to kind of rein in that abstract version of himself, which is how you get Pig and Raising Arizona. And
when he was younger, it was like, I'm trying to do something new, and like you said, he's trying to do avant-garde stuff with acting, trying to reinvent the wheel as a new, young, up and coming actor.
He's trying to bring silent film to modern day film. Is what it felt like sometimes. It was like where he's.
Yeah.
I think that's what, to his credit, I think that's where his physicality has been honed so well. Is that he would always over exaggerate, but then how do you deliver dialogue with that mentality? Sometimes it's off the fucking rails.
To be fair, this was the first of 2 times that he played a cartoon character come to life, and the second time worked really well. Amazing. Raising Arizona as Woody Woodpecker or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
But that was physical. It wasn't vocal, which helped.
Yes.
He didn't put on
true.
Yeah, he didn't put on the voice. It was just
I'd say also Vampire's Kiss, he was kind of like a cartoon character in that, or at least an overly exaggerated.
Yeah, I think that was more of his interpretation of his father.
I think that was also the silent film thing, especially when he turns into the vampire.
Yeah. And again, his physicality in that film was incredible.
Yeah. Masterpiece. I will fight anybody who lampoons that movie.
Not everybody could turn the words boohoo into a memorable moment.
In a 2018 interview with David Marchese on the website Vulture, Kathleen Turner said that she was taken aback on the set of Peggy Sue Got Married when she first heard the voice that Nicolas Cage chose to use while playing her love interest. But she didn't think it was her job to direct another actor's performance. She instead talked to the movie's director, Francis Ford Coppola, and asked if he had approved Cage's choice. When Coppola failed to intervene, Turner said that she made it work by choosing to interact with Cage's character in a way that explained her character's eventual disillusionment with the past.
Okay.
I think it ties into, like, she's having a heart attack. Spoilers. And this is all in her head. So I feel like this is her wacky funhouse mirror version of her past.
Right. Yeah.
And, like, I don't think he actually, his character, the actual Charlie, talked like this the whole time and was so over the top. But maybe he was. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kathleen Turner stated that Francis Ford Coppola was contractually obligated to finish the film on time or lose final cut privilege. We've talked about final cut privilege a lot on this show because of Paul Schrader and some of his choices with films and having final cut taken away from him. We've seen the results of that with Dying of the Light, and then him
dark.
just accidentally leaking dark on the dark web after re-editing the movie or having someone else re-edit it. We didn't really talk about that much, but it's just funny that I have a specific vision of this. You go make it, though.
Mm-hmm. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. And I can blame you. Accordingly, the cast and crew worked 20-hour days, 6 days a week to deliver the movie to the studio on time, but he went back and fucking re-edited it anyway in the spring. So I guess he had already delivered the film, so they gave him final cut, and then he was like, I think we need a new ending. I don't know. He seems like a really hard person to work with.
Yeah.
It's probably why his career kind of hasn't been as big since the 80s.
Yeah, and the movies he's been making have been terrible. Hopefully this film that he's putting out, I think it's coming out this year, the Metropolis or Megapolis or whatever the hell it's called. Hopefully that is kind of his return to form, and then he can kind of go out with a bang rather than a whimper, because I don't think he's made anything good since. I would say the best movie he's made since the 80s was Godfather Part 3. If that says anything.
Damn.
This last quick fact, I was kind of taken aback by this because we have done 40 some odd films on this show, and I have never heard a crossword more than he's kind of hard to work with because he's very opinionated. But I've never heard anything bad about Nick throughout all of the stuff that we've done so far. There's been a few things where like he walked off set because he didn't get paid. But he's working with Paul Schrader, so of course
Schrader, so
makes sense.
You can't hold that against him. Plus,
But
it's his pay.
This one is this one really struck me because of how out of character it seems. But we'll get to why it seems out of character. But Kathleen Turner has spoke numerous times about the difficulty of working with co-star Nicolas Cage. In her 2008 memoir, she wrote, quote, "He caused so many problems. He was arrested twice for drunk driving, and I think once for stealing a dog." He'd come across a chihuahua he liked and stuck it in his jacket.
I mean, yeah, I can
I can see
buy
that part. On the last night of filming, he came into my trailer after he'd clearly been heavily drinking. He fell on his knees and asked if I could ever forgive him. I said, "Not right now. I have a scene to shoot. Excuse me," and just walked out. Nicolas didn't manage to kill the film, but he didn't add a lot to it either. For years, whenever I saw him, he'd apologize for his behavior, and I'd say, "Look, I'm way over it, but I haven't pursued the idea of working with him again." That's pretty hardcore. I've never heard anything like that about Nick's performances, his actions on set. Or him just, getting arrested for drunk driving twice and stealing a dog.
Yeah. I mean,
stealing a dog feels more in character.
I feel like the Coen brothers were pretty critical of him, but in a very politically correct way, not to piss him off or the Coppolas. Mm-hmm. So it seems like that time frame in his life, he was a bit of a challenging person to get along with. And
I also feel like
with the drinking.
I also feel like it was potentially him trying to get under Kathleen Turner's skin because he's playing the husband that she hates at this point.
I could see that being the case.
I could see that because we've seen him be huge into this method acting stuff, especially in the 80s. Like we talked about on Wild at Heart, pre-David Lynch, he kind of, thought that he had to be this method actor in everything that he did, and that somehow Wild at Heart, of all movies, brought him out of that and made him decide not to do that as much anymore. Though he did do it again on Leaving Las Vegas, of course.
Yeah, but he says it was only that one scene. He said that
drinking.
That was the only time that he went method in that movie. And and I think that might have been the final nail in the coffin about being method all the time, because I remember him talking, and I feel like recently he was talking about that film again and be like, yeah, that was miserable. That was awful. That was an awful experience.
Can't imagine why.
I would never do that again.
Yeah, he says he never drinks on
set
films anymore. Which is kind of crazy if you look back at his performance in Joe. Of like, that drunk performance was so good. I literally thought he was drunk in that scene.
Oh yeah, he nailed it.
Yeah.
Or when he's,
Kathleen Turner
drinking a beer and mom and dad.
Yeah. Kathleen Turner also criticized Cage for his decision to wear false teeth and to adopt a nasally fry for his character. Nasal fry, sorry. Cage says he based it on Pokey, of course. And during an interview in 2018, Turner commented on Cage's nasal voice that it was tough not to say, cut it out. But it wasn't my job to say to another actor what he should or shouldn't do. So I went with Francis. I asked him, you approve this choice? It was very touchy. Nicolas Cage was very difficult on set, but the director allowed what Nicolas wanted to do for his role. So I wasn't in a position to do much except play with what I'd been given. If anything, Cage's portrayal only further illustrated my character's disillusionment with with the past. The way I saw it, he was that asshole.
Maybe that's why they gave her a nod.
That's what I was going to say.
Work with that.
She had to work with that the whole time. Okay, so we talked about all of that stuff, but here is the asterisk to this whole thing. In 2008, in response to Turner's claims that Nick had driven drunk and stolen a Chihuahua, he sued for defamation and won.
Whoa.
In exchange, he received a public apology from Turner, admission from her publisher that the claims were false and defamatory, and a pledge that Turner and the publisher would make a substantial donation to charity of Nick's choice, I'm guessing.
Chihuahua rehab, Chihuahua adoption service.
Yeah. It was
that's
that
crazy.
ferret that he adopted.
Right, or a zebra that he bought with.
Yeah.
That's how I got
What's her name?
Raven Hoogan.
So that's how I got Hoogan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because she said he got arrested for stealing a Chihuahua. Like,
yeah, she
that's
said
pretty
that he
easy
got
to prove
arrested
if that happened or not. You know,
Yeah.
And along with the drunk driving, I mean,
yeah.
there'd be.
Well, you
maybe
might not get arrested. You can still say somebody drunk drove and nothing happened. But saying someone got arrested for stealing a Chihuahua, there'd be a record of that somewhere if that happened. So,
yeah, if she wouldn't have said arrested, I think she would have been okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that,
or she would have said allegedly,
yeah.
Right,
or
and maybe
she
there
might
was-
have been in the car with him when he was driving drunk. I mean,
it could be. Or if there was, was there nobody else to corroborate it? So at that point, it's just her saying he drove drunk 30 years in the past or something. And his publicist was
that's
like,
interesting that he
fuck
felt
off.
that passionate about her making those claims that he actually took legal action. So
Yeah.
interesting.
well, I mean, in 2008, Nick had a lot more money than Kathleen Turner did.
Did he?
If we look about it, no, that was right before the fall off. That was right before Spirit of Vengeance.
Yeah, but he was.
Yeah,
spending
that was right
money
after
like,
Ghost Rider, man. He got that Ghost Rider money.
Yeah, but he was spending that money like he was printing it himself.
that was like, wasn't that the year that National Treasure 2 came out?
I think so.
He was like, I'm going to use this National Treasure money. get that shit stricken
like
from the
right
record.
there, like right as it came out, or right after, or it came out the year before. I can't remember.
Yeah, that could have been a reason why. Like maybe that was
True.
coming out in the news because his trajectory was up again because of National Treasure, and maybe there was some Kathleen Turner news or her saying that got dug up and then was running or making the rounds in interviews and stuff, and might have been costing him jobs or who knows.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. If you think about it in terms of like, like I said, like we've done 40 some odd films and I've never heard a bad word about Nick like that.
Yeah.
Right. That lends more credence to the fact that she just made it up to sell her book. I don't know, but I could see him just stuffing a chihuahua in his coat and walking off. I could see that happening, and I could see him driving while under the influence.
Yeah,
but I don't think he got arrested for any of that.
And there can also be stories that over time have become embellished in her own memory because, our memories are not the greatest.
Yeah.
So, and I also feel like there's definitely possibly something to the fact that he was like just purposely going out of his way to piss her off because he was playing a character that was like her ex-husband.
That's true.
I could totally see that. He inspired people like Jared Leto to send dog poop to cast members and stuff. Nick was the early version of that, doing that shit in the 80s.
Yeah. Daniel
Thankfully,
Day-Lewis,
he stopped.
Took his acting cues from Nick. Call me Lincoln.
Call me Lincoln. And finally, this one I just thought was funny. Charlie begs Peggy to marry him, saying he doesn't know what the future might bring. He might even lose an arm. And in the very next film he did, Moonstruck, he lost his hand. Funny coincidence.
It's funny.